The rescue. Doran Vale didn't consider himself a hero, a point he frequently made to himself as he welded together scraps from derelict shuttles. The abandoned space platform he called home, officially designated Orbital Relay 17, unofficially called the Rust Belt by the few traders who bothered to visit, hung in the shadow of a gas giant's rings. Years of cosmic radiation had painted the platform's exterior a dull copper, matching Doran's weathered skin and graying beard. Proximity alert, announced the platform's ancient AI, its voice crackling through speakers that hadn't been serviced in a decade. Unidentified vessel approaching on irregular trajectory. Doran grunted, setting down his torch. Few things qualified as irregular in the fringe sectors. Smugglers, pirates, corporate scouts all followed predictable patterns. He shuffled to the observation deck where holographic displays flickered to life, showing a small research vessel tumbling through space, trailing debris and plasma. "That's not approaching," Doran muttered, "that's crashing." The vessel's trajectory would bring it dangerously close to the platform. Doran's fingers danced across the controls, activating the platform's neglected tractor beam. The system whined in protest before engaging, gently redirecting the vessel to the auxiliary docking bay. "What are you doing?" Doran asked himself. "This is how people get killed in those holodramas Mela brings." Mela Thorne was the only regular visitor to the platform, a trader who brought supplies in exchange for the rare tech Doran salvaged. The docking bay pressurized with a hiss as Doran approached, plasma cutter in one hand, makeshift shield in the other. The research vessel's hull bore insignia Doran didn't recognize, sleek geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "Hellos," he called out, "anyone alive in there?" The vessel's hatch opened with a reluctant groan. Doran raised his shield, expecting the worst: pirates, radiation-sick researchers, or corpses. What emerged instead was a child. Small, frail, with skin that shimmered like opal and eyes large and dark as space itself. Not human, though humanoid. The child's ears extended into delicate points, and fine, luminescent markings traced patterns across exposed skin. "Vaxker," the child whispered, voice trembling, "Vaxker Endal." Doran lowered his shield. "I don't understand," he gestured to himself, "Doran." The child tilted its head, then placed a six-fingered hand against its chest. "Nyria." A crash from inside the vessel startled them both. Nyria's eyes widened in terror as she grabbed Doran's weathered hand. "Vaxker." This time Doran understood: danger. He pulled Nyria behind him as a figure emerged from the vessel, tall, armored, and definitely not friendly. Its helmet concealed its features, but the weapon it carried was unmistakable: a neural disruptor, illegal in all civilized systems. "Step aside," the figure commanded in a voice that sounded processed, artificial. "The specimen belongs to the Institute." "Specimen," Doran tightened his grip on the plasma cutter, "she's a child. The luminary are property of the Hegemony Research Institute. Surrender it immediately." Doran glanced at Nyria, who trembled behind him. Something in her eyes, fear, yes, but also a desperate hope, stirred something long dormant in his chest. "No," Doran said simply, and activated his plasma cutter. The figure raised its weapon, but Doran had spent 30 years in the fringe sectors. He'd fought off pirates, survived radiation storms, and once bested a mercenary crew with nothing but a broken mech suit and sheer stubbornness. The plasma cutter sliced through the neural disruptor, rendering it useless. "Platform," Doran shouted, "emergency protocol, scrapyard." The AI responded immediately. Docking bay doors sealed, lights flickered, and mechanical arms descended from the ceiling. The figure retreated back into the vessel as the platform's defenses engaged, a patchwork system Doran had constructed from salvaged security drones and mining equipment. "Come on," Doran grabbed Nyria's hand, pulling her toward the maintenance shafts. "We need to move." That wasn't the only one. Nyria followed without hesitation, her small feet pattering against the metal flooring. As they entered the narrow corridors that wound through the platform's skeleton, Doran heard the distinct sound of the vessel's engines engaging, trying to break free of the tractor beam. "Where are we going?" Nyria asked, her voice soft but the words suddenly clear. Doran paused, surprised. "You speak standard." "I learned quickly." Each word seemed to require tremendous effort, but she managed. "They took me from home, made me learn many things." Doran's jaw tightened. The Hegemony Research Institute was known for its disregard for ethical boundaries, especially in unregulated space. "We're going somewhere safe," he said. My quarters, then we figure out what to do with you. The platform shuddered as the vessel broke free, but Doran knew it wouldn't leave, not without its specimen. His quarters were a cluttered mess of salvaged tech, rare books, and the odd collection of ancient earth plants he'd cultivated over the years. He sealed the door behind them, activating security measures that would make a military installation envious. Sit, he told Naria, gesturing to his worn armchair. He rummaged through a cabinet and produced a ration pack. Eat. It's not good, but it's not poison either. Naria accepted the food cautiously. Why help me? Doran busied himself with checking the platform's security feeds. Because they called you a specimen, I don't like that. A simple answer, but the truth was more complicated. Doran had spent 20 years alone on this platform, and before that, another 10 wandering the fringe sectors after the collapse war claimed his homeworld. Loneliness was his companion, isolation his comfort. Yet something about this child, the way she looked at him with those bottomless eyes, made him remember what it was like to care. The security feed showed armored figures searching the platform's public areas. 3 of them armed and methodical. They'll find us eventually, Doran muttered. This place isn't that big. Naria had cleaned her plate with surprising speed. My people, she said, her command of standard improving by the minute. They will come if I call, the luminary, we are connected. Connected how? Naria's markings glowed brighter. Through the stars, the light between worlds. Psychic communication. Doran had heard rumors about species with such abilities, but had dismissed them as fringe sector fairy tales. Naria nodded solemnly. Need quiet, need focus. Doran checked the security feeds again. The intruders were getting closer. You've got 5 minutes, he said. After that, we're moving again. Naria closed her eyes, her markings pulsing with soft light. Doran busied himself gathering supplies, food, portable tech, weapons. If they needed to abandon the platform, he wouldn't leave empty-handed. 4 minutes later, Naria opened her eyes. They come, she said simply, but need time, need safe place until then. Doran nodded. I know somewhere, but it's not going to be easy getting there. The journey through the platform's maintenance shafts was tense. Twice they nearly encountered the intruders, saved only by Doran's intimate knowledge of the station's layout. Finally, they reached his personal shuttle, a cobbled-together vessel that looked more like abstract art than transportation. It's not pretty, Doran said as they boarded, but it's tough and it's fast. As they detached from the platform, Doran caught a glimpse of the research vessel pursuing them. He engaged the shuttle's unconventional drive system, salvaged from a luxury cruise liner and modified beyond recognition, and they shot into the gas giant's rings. Navigation through the debris field was treacherous, but Doran knew every eddy and current. The research vessel followed stubbornly until Doran executed a maneuver that sent them screaming through a particularly dense cluster of ice fragments. The pursuing vessel couldn't match the turn and veered away, its hull integrity compromised. They will send others, Naria said quietly, watching the vessel retreat. Probably, Doran agreed, but they'll have to find us first. He set course for Nexus Station, a sprawling trading hub where anonymity could be purchased as easily as supplies. There, Doran knew a fixer who specialized in complicated situations. During the 3-day journey, Naria revealed more about herself. She was the daughter of a luminary elder, taken during a diplomatic mission to study what humans called the fringe sectors. The luminary, she explained, were a reclusive species but powerful, masters of light-based technology and psychic abilities that humans had barely begun to understand. My people rarely leave our systems, she said, her standard now fluent thanks to her remarkable learning speed. That's why they took me to study, to learn our secrets. Doran listened, saying little. He'd spent too long alone to be comfortable with conversation, but found himself oddly at ease with Naria. Perhaps because she didn't expect him to be anything other than what he was. At Nexus Station, Doran called in favors, spent credits he'd been hoarding for years, and secured passage for Naria on a diplomatic vessel bound for the Celestial Concordance, a coalition of systems that included luminary space. They will welcome you there, Doran assured her as they stood in the docking bay waiting for the diplomatic shuttle. And they'll get you home. Naria looked up at him, those dark eyes unreadable. Come with me, she said. My people would welcome you. Doran shook his head. I don't belong there, I don't belong anywhere, really. You belong with me, Naria insisted. You saved me. That doesn't make me yours, Doran said gently. Or you mind, you have a home, a family. I'm just the guy who happened to be there when you needed help. The diplomatic shuttle arrived, sleek and elegant, everything Doran's life wasn't. As Naria prepared to board, she pressed something into Doran's hand, a small crystal that glowed with inner light. If you need me, she said, this will find me. We are connected now. Doran closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its warmth. Safe journey, kid. Nyria smiled, a luminous expression that transformed her alien features. This is not goodbye, Doran Vale. The stars remember those who show kindness. As the shuttle departed, Doran stood alone in the docking bay, the crystal warm in his palm. Then he turned and walked back to his shuttle, telling himself the heaviness in his chest was just indigestion from Nexus Station's questionable food. He had salvage to collect and a life of solitude to return to. The universe would continue as it always had, indifferent to the brief moment of connection he'd shared with a child of light. Or so he thought. The return. 15 years passed like dust through an hourglass, unremarkable and largely unnoticed by Doran Vale. The rust belt had grown more decrepit, its hull plates sporting new patches over old patches. Doran himself had weathered similarly, his beard now fully gray, his shoulders more stooped from decades of mechanical work. He rarely thought of the alien child he'd rescued. The crystal she'd given him sat in a small box alongside other curiosities he'd collected, forgotten treasures from a life spent in the shadows of greater events. That changed on a Thursday, or what Doran arbitrarily called Thursday, since conventional calendars meant little in the eternal night of deep space. Proximity alert, announced the platform's AI, its voice somehow more decrepit than 15 years prior. Vessel approaching, classification diplomatic. Doran frowned, setting aside the power converter he'd been repairing. Diplomatic vessels didn't visit abandoned relay stations. They didn't even acknowledge such places existed. The holographic display showed a vessel that made Doran whistle softly. Sleek lines of brushed silver and blue, propulsion systems that seemed to bend light rather than displace it, and dimensions that suggested it could house a small city. Orbital Relay 17, came a crisp voice over the comm system. This is the Stellar Concordance vessel Luminous Dawn. We request docking clearance. Doran scratched his beard. Denied. This is a private platform. Find somewhere else to park your pretty boat. A pause, then, Doran Vale, this is a diplomatic vessel under the protection of Empress Nyria of the Celestial Concordance. Docking clearance is not optional. Doran froze. Nyria. The name echoed through 15 years of solitude. He granted the clearance. The vessel docked with more grace than the platform deserved, magnetic seals engaging with barely a whisper. Doran waited in the docking bay, dressed in the same oil-stained coveralls he wore every day, plasma cutter hanging from his belt, not as a threat but as a comfort. The vessel's boarding ramp extended, gleaming like liquid silver. Down it walked a figure that stopped Doran's heart for 3 full beats. She was tall now, her opalescent skin catching the dim light of the docking bay. Her luminescent markings had developed into intricate patterns that framed her face and followed the curve of her arms. She wore robes of woven light, ever shifting between colors that had no name in human language. Her eyes remained the same, dark, depthless, and somehow kind. "Hello, Doran," she said, her voice melodic but firm, the voice of someone accustomed to command. Doran swallowed. "You've grown," he managed. A smile touched her lips. "And you've aged. Time does that to humans." Not just humans. She gestured to her entourage, 6 guards in crystalline armor and a slender being who appeared to be an advisor. "Leave us," she commanded. They retreated to the vessel without question. When they were alone, Nyria's regal posture softened. "I didn't think your platform would still be here." "Where else would it be?" Doran shrugged. "It's not like it has legs." "But you do," her gaze was evaluating, "yet you stayed." Doran shifted uncomfortably. "I like it here, no committees, no politics." "No people," Nyria added softly. "Especially that," Doran agreed. After a moment he sighed. "I'm guessing this isn't a social call. Empresses don't usually drop by to reminisce." Nyria's expression grew somber. "No, they don't." She reached into her robes and produced a small device that projected a holographic star chart. "The hegemony has returned, stronger, more determined. They're pushing into concordant space with claims of scientific expedition rights. Let me guess, they're especially interested in luminary territory." Yes, the same institute that took me has now grown into a quasi-military branch of the hegemony. They call themselves the Evolutionary Vanguard now. Doran laughed bitterly. Fancy name for the same old thing, what does this have to do with me? Nyria waved her hand, changing the holographic display to show a familiar face, a man with sharp features and cold eyes. This is Director Trevin. He was leading the team that captured me 15 years ago. Now he commands the Vanguard. Doran's eyes narrowed. I remember him. He wasn't wearing a helmet when they boarded your research vessel. I got a good look before everything went to hell. Exactly, Nyria said. You're the only person outside the hegemony who can identify him. The Concordance Council needs proof that the Vanguard and the Institute are the same entity, proof that their scientific mission is a front for bioweapon development using luminary physiology. And I'm supposed to what? Testify before your council, point at a hologram and say, yep, that's the guy. That's not exactly compelling evidence. Nyria's markings pulsed with emotion. No, I need you to come with me to Nexus Prime, where Trevin is attending a sector summit under diplomatic immunity. I need someone who can move in shadows, who understands the underbelly of these places, someone who can help me gather real evidence. Doran ran a hand through his beard. You're the empress of a galactic superpower. You have spies, agents, specialists. Why me? Because they're watching my people, because I trust you, she paused, and because you owe me. I saved your life, Doran countered. And I'm trying to save millions of lives now. Her voice remained calm, but her markings flared. The hegemony doesn't just want to study us anymore. They want to weaponize us, turn our connection to light into a weapon of mass destruction. Doran was silent for a long moment, then I'll need to pack. Aboard the luminous Dawn, Doran felt painfully out of place. The vessel's interior was designed with an aesthetic that emphasized light and space, corridors that seemed wider than they were, ceilings that gave the impression of sky rather than metal, and everywhere surfaces that caught and reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Nyria's personal quarters were a study in controlled opulence. Nothing was ostentatious, yet everything spoke of power and precision. Your clothes, she said, gesturing to his stained coveralls, will need to be replaced. Doran crossed his arms. I've worn these for 10 years. That, Nyria said dryly, is precisely the problem. The replacement outfit wasn't as bad as Doran had feared. Practical clothing in muted colors, designed to blend in rather than stand out. The material was unlike anything he'd encountered, lightweight but seemingly impervious to tearing or staining. These are Sentinel garments, explained Nyria's advisor, a willowy being named Thalen. They adapt to environmental conditions and can deflect minor energy weapons. Fancy, Doran muttered. Do they make coffee too? Thalen blinked several times. No, but the molecular. He's joking, Nyria interrupted. Doran's humor is an acquired taste. The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days. During that time, Nyria briefed Doran on the political landscape of the Concordance, the rising tensions with the hegemony, and the delicate balance of power that might soon shatter into war. The problem, she explained as they shared a meal in her private dining chamber, is that half the Concordance Council believes appeasement is the answer. They think, if we give the hegemony limited access to our worlds, they'll be satisfied. They won't be, Doran said, sampling a dish that tasted like seafood but glowed faintly blue. People like Trevin don't understand enough. They only understand more. Exactly, but without proof, Nyria sighed. The Council hears my concerns as the paranoia of a former captive. Doran studied her across the table. Despite her power and position, he could still see echoes of the frightened child he'd rescued. Being Empress isn't all it's cracked up to be, is it? A small, genuine smile. No, but it has its moments. Nexus Prime was Nexus Station writ large, a sprawling metropolis built into and around a massive asteroid. Where the station had been chaotic and grimy, Prime was ordered chaos, its grime hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and commerce. The Sector Summit was being held in the Grand Commerce Hall, a structure that dominated the asteroid's northern hemisphere. Delegates from a dozen systems mingled in a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy and espionage. Remember, Nyria said as they prepared to enter the hall, I'll be occupied with the formal proceedings. You'll need to move independently, find Trevin, and plant the surveillance devices. Doran patted the pocket containing tiny molecular trackers, concordance technology that could record conversations and track movements without detection. Not my first infiltration job. Just try not to start a war, she replied, only half joking. Inside the hall, Doran was invisible, just another aide in the sea of diplomatic entourages. Nyria transformed as she entered, her presence commanding attention without effort. Delegates gravitated toward her, some with genuine respect, others with thinly veiled agenda. Doran spotted Trevin within the first hour, older now, his hair silver at the temples, but with the same cold calculation in his eyes. He was surrounded by hegemony officials, each wearing the distinctive red and black uniform with the evolutionary vanguard insignia, a spiral galaxy with a lightning bolt through its center. Getting close enough to plant a tracker would be challenging but not impossible. Doran had spent decades perfecting the art of being unremarkable. He circulated through the crowd, gradually working his way toward the hegemony delegation. As he drew near, he overheard Trevin speaking to a concordance delegate, merely scientific interest. The luminary physiology represents the next stage in evolutionary development. Surely you can appreciate the value of such research. The delegate nodded uncertainly, but the Empress claims your methods are unethical. Trevin smiled thinly. The Empress's experiences as a child have unfortunately colored her perspective. Our methods have evolved significantly since those regrettable early experiments. Doran's fingers tightened around his glass. Regrettable experiments, a convenient way to describe kidnapping and torture. He waited for the conversation to conclude, then approached as if to collect empty glasses from the table. A servant's role, invisible, forgettable. As he reached across the table, he brushed against Trevin's sleeve, depositing the first tracker. The second tracker was placed on a data terminal near where the hegemony delegation had established their temporary offices. The third on the underside of their shuttle's docking mechanism. By evening, Doran had accomplished his mission without incident, a rare occurrence in his experience. He returned to the Concordance Embassy, where Nyria was concluding a day of formal negotiations. "It's done," he told her when they were alone. "Now we wait." They didn't wait long. By morning, the trackers had gathered damning evidence. Trevin discussing acquisition operations in luminary territory, detailed plans for specimen processing facilities, and most damning, explicit instructions to circumvent Concordance border patrols. Nyria presented the evidence to the council in an emergency session. Doran watched from a side chamber as the holographic recordings played, Trevin's own words condemning him. The council voted unanimously to revoke the hegemony's diplomatic status and issue a formal ultimatum: withdraw from Concordance space or face military response. War had been averted, but only just. Later, aboard the luminous Dawn as it prepared to return to Concordance space, Nyria found Doran in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "The council wants to thank you formally," she said, joining him at the viewport. Doran snorted. "Pass. I've had enough formality to last another 15 years. "What will you do now?" she asked quietly. "Return to your platform." He was silent for a long moment. "There's not much left for me there." "There could be a place for you in the Concordance. Not as a diplomat," she added quickly, seeing his expression, "but as an advisor, someone who sees things differently." "An old scavenger among the stars," Doran shook his head. "I don't think so." "A man who saved an empress," Nyria corrected. "A man who helped prevent a war. The Concordance needs people like you, Doran, people who understand that sometimes the most important work happens in the shadows." Doran turned to her. "I'm not good with people." "You were good with me. You were a kid, kids are easier." Nyria laughed, a sound like crystal bells. "I'm offering you purpose, Doran, and maybe something you've been avoiding for decades." "What's that?" "The home." The word hung between them, fragile and powerful. Doran thought of the platform, of the years spent alone with only his thoughts and occasional visitors. He thought of the box containing Nyria's crystal, forgotten until now. "I'm too old to change," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "No one's asking you to change," Nyria replied. "Just to be who you already are, but with company occasionally." Doran looked out at the stars again. They seemed different somehow, not just distant points of light, but possibilities, connections. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Nyria smiled, her markings glowing with soft satisfaction. "That's all I ask." As the luminous dawn accelerated toward Concordance space, Doran Vale, scavenger, recluse, reluctant hero, felt something shift inside him. Not a dramatic transformation, but the quiet acknowledgement that perhaps isolation wasn't the only way to survive in this vast, complicated universe. Perhaps there was room for one more beginning, even for someone who had spent a lifetime ending things. So, he said, turning to Nyria, tell me about this advisor position. Does it come with better food than nutrient bars? Nyria's laughter echoed through the observation deck, bright as the stars themselves.